This year isn't a leap year, right? No. This being or not being a leap year literally has nothing to do with what today's video is about, but I was just wondering, like, how many days I had until March. That doesn't really pertain to... Never mind. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another monthly reading wrap-up video. We are once again over halfway through the month, and I've yet to wrap up my reading from the past month, so, another late video for me, yay. Not that I need to defend myself, but I'm gonna say in my defense, college has been nuts and my files have been not uploading properly. It's a very long story and I won't bore you with it, but we are back with another monthly reading wrap up and I'm very excited. If it wasn't obvious, today we are wrapping up my January 2025 reading, which I have to say took me by like surprise in how I read, what I read, and just how much I read this month in general. And to explain that in more detail to where it makes more sense, let's start with the statistics for January 2025. In January, I read 14 books. 2 of them were from my own physical collection, and then 12 of them were audiobooks. As for ratings, I gave out 2 2-stars, 8 3-stars, 1 3.5 star, 1 4-star, 1 4.5 star, and 1 5-star, which gives me a wonderful average of about 3.14 stars per book. And then finally, the shortest book I read was 50 pages, and the longest book I read was 544 pages. This month in total, I read 4,637 pages, which gives me an average of about 331.21 pages per book. But as always, now that we have the wonderful statistics out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about each of these books individually. Our first one being Corporate Crush by Moxie Rose. Honestly, this was just like a middle of the road romance, really nothing crazy. This book does take place in the same world as Quarantine Crush, which I read last year in like December, I think. And while the books have the same characters, you really don't have to read them in order if you don't want to. Like for publication date, the books obviously go chronologically, but you focus on a different couple in every book, like, you know, what are they called? Interconnected standalones. That's what this is. They are interconnected standalones. But honestly, I read this over a month ago and I couldn't tell you anything like crazy about it. Basic plot, she is his assistant. She likes him, obviously. He is just getting out of like a fake marriage type situation. Or like a marriage of convenience, like for the business, I think. Something like that. And they end up partnering up together to have a fake marriage because of some business deal they want to go through so they can both succeed in their careers and flourish or whatever. I will say that by the end I did feel the chemistry between these two characters, and I absolutely love the friend group that our female main character has. They are so funny. They do so many unnecessary things that just get them into trouble, but it's literally probably one of the most entertaining things I've ever read in my life. Corporate Crush by Moxie Rose got a 3 out of 5 stars for me. Moving on, we are going to talk about 6 books and 1 novella in like one sitting because they're all from the same book series and they all got the same rating. Those books are as follows: 2 Witches and a Whiskey, Demon Magic and a Martini, The Alchemist and an Armorado, Druid Vices and a Vodka, Lost Talismans and a Tequila, Damned Souls and a Sangria, and the novella, A Damsel and a Demigod. Okay, so all of these books are by Annette Marie. At the end of last year, I completely fell in love with her Gilded Codex series. This is like the Spellbound story route. And as you can see, I finished it. And it was absolutely lovely. With the exception of like 1 or 2 books to give myself a brain break from the series, I binge read this in like a week. Like I really loved it. The whole premise of this series is that you follow Tori, who is a human, as she tries to find a job. And by some miracle of God or some spirit of a demon, she ends up working for a guild, which in this world is like part of the magic system and the magical side of the world that humans aren't supposed to know about, and they just assume that she does because she's not like deterred by anything. But that is like dumbing it down literally so low, right? That's like book 1. Obviously I was like 9 books deep, but I'm not gonna say anything because it ruins like the entire plot. But I can say that these characters get up to so much mischief. They have like little adventures. They do like bounty huntery type things. Like, it's a fun time. I continue to compare it to reading like the Zodiac Academy series. Like, I feel like it gives the same type of vibes, but that is coming from someone who hasn't actually read the Zodiac Academy series yet, so don't take that for like 100% granted. I just think that if you're going to read these books, or literally anything by Annette Marie, you probably want to go into it with the mindset of, oh, I'm totally reading this for pleasure and entertainment, rather than like best plot ever, never seen before, out of the water crazy. With that being said, every single one of these books got a 3 out of 5 stars for me. I am 110% going to read more by Annette Marie, and probably more in the Gilded Codex world, because there's like other storylines to follow, and I'm very excited for that. Next up, we have my historical fiction read of the month, which was All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I don't know how to say his last name. Like, every single historical fiction book I have ever picked up in my life, starting from like 2 years ago to now, this one, once again, revolves around World War II. I don't know what my obsession with reading about World War II and like the aftermath and people's storylines and that, I don't know where the obsession comes from, but I truly have like so many that I'm like, I want to read it. And I'm like, why? Why do you want to, why? Maybe I'm subconsciously doing that thing where I'm studying on history so I can see like the future that I have to look forward to in like 20, 30 years. Maybe that's what's happening, because I truly cannot justify how many World War II books I read like in any other way. Anyways, All the Light We Cannot See. Okay. So this book is like really hard to describe, so let me like break down kind of what's happening and see if I can give you like some sort of idea of what I read. Okay. So in this book, we follow 2 characters, one of which is a boy who is fighting for the Germans in the war, and the second of which is our female main character, who is blind and is a Jew, I believe. I don't know if she was actually a Jew or just living in one of the places where the Germans invaded and used as their home base, because I know that her life was pretty much the same and she could still go out and do all of these things. Okay, well, not pretty much the same, because there's like a war going on in her neighborhood, but like relatively overarching, can still go out in the world. It doesn't have to wear a star patch. Things like that. Okay? I really hope that didn't come off as like ignorant or rude or anything. That's what I picked up from the story, okay? But we follow both of their perspectives in 2 different timelines, one of which takes place during World War II. So like for our female, we're following her as she has to travel to a different country because her father has a mission he needs to do. And for our guy, we follow him as he is recruited into the army because he's really good with radios. And then on the other hand, we are following them at like the end of World War II, where a bomb blew up the town they both happened to be in, and then we follow them as they get to the point of them meeting. And then after we go through all that, we end up in just the female's perspective towards the end of the book, where we get kind of like a wrap up when World War II ends. So, kind of complex. It's one of those stories where you're jumping back and forth between characters and timelines. It's a little bit confusing, but the overall story that was being told and the way that it was told was absolutely beautiful. I especially loved when we were in the female main character's perspective, because she was blind, so we were actually like blind with her, like we couldn't see. And I think that that truly added such a like third depth, extra lovey bit for me to the book, because it's like a whole new perspective on the war and what happened. Obviously, I liked it a whole lot because I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, but it was phenomenal. I can't really tell you any like small details anymore, but I just love reading about World War II. It's weird, but I enjoy it, and clearly I had a good time. Next up, we have The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I told myself that I was going to read more popular books this year, and this is the first series that I picked up. I truly did not know what I wanted to know going into The Cruel Prince. All I really had an idea of is that female main character, male main character, they fall in love. Fae world, she's not a fae, and she's got really cool hair horns, because I loved the fan art for this book. I liked the fan art so much that it actually drove me to read this series first before any of the other popular books I want to get to. However, the book was not my favorite by any means. Going into this, I had the impression that Jude, our female main character, was an absolute badass and was like so cool and just incredibly awesome and so cool and whatever. Oh, you know what? I actually have a physical copy of this book. She was so cool or whatever. But truly, I did not get those vibes at all. She honestly, she peeves me. Jude makes me mad. Especially in The Cruel Prince. I have since read The Wicked King and The Queen of Nothing, but especially in The Cruel Prince. She makes me so freaking upset. She goes on and on and on about how she just wants a place in the Fae world and about how the Fae treat her terribly because she's a human and da 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 da. And then she turns around and does things that are 10 times worse to the Fae and pretends like it's fine because I'm just securing my place as part of the Fae community. And I'm like, you literally cannot have it both ways. I am all for a character saying, I deserve to be here. And I am all for a character saying, down with the patriarchy. But for her to do that and say that it was justified was absolutely just not the vibe. Okay, no, you can't justify that. I'm talking about the end of the book, by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about. Like, it blows my mind. It blows my mind. Like, I love that she's manipulative. That was fun. But, like, what? Also, at this point of reading the series, I truly, for the life of me, could not see why Jude and Cardan were getting it together. Why? Literally, why? He pushed her into a river. He pushed her into a river, and he likes her. And she likes him because they pushed... Ugh! I am all for, like, morally gray men and people who just are, like, a little bit mean. But this was downright repulsive behavior on his end. I love when characters go from enemies to lovers. I love that. But this felt like Jude lacked a lot of self-freaking respect, dude. Just a lot of lack of self-respect. Which honestly made me lose respect for Jude. So much more so than I already did. So clearly, I did not enjoy The Cruel Prince very much. At the end of all of this, I ended up giving The Cruel Prince a 2 out of 5 stars. It truly peeves me. I cannot stand Jude, and I don't know how I got through the rest of the series, if I'm going to be honest. But we're going to talk about those guys in February, because I did, like, just finish those. However, we can take a little more deep dive into the Cruel Prince world to talk about The Lost Sisters. This is a novella which is following Jude's sister's perspective. Her name is Taryn. And literally all we get from this is that Taryn is low-key a dipshit. I mean, like, talk about sister trauma, dude. Did I like what Jude was doing with that other guy? No. But at least she wasn't freaking doing that, you know? She wasn't doing what freaking Taryn was doing to Jude, okay? Like, it wasn't that bad. I truly think that Taryn was also just looking for her place in the Fae world, but they went about it in such bad ways, like both of them, that they both peeve me, and they both make me upset. Taryn more so than Jude, because she pretty much, like, marriage of convenience herself. But, you know, I can't control what these characters do. I just have to deal with how they make me feel. So, The Lost Sisters by Holly Black also got a 2 out of 5 stars. I was not having a fun Jerry time. But let's move on to talk about a book where I did have an absolutely fantabulous, fantastic time, and that is going to be The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy. I have been hearing for a while that Elle Kennedy writes really good romances, especially the Graham Effect series, or I believe it's, like, slowly becoming a series. I think, like, the 3rd one just came out or something like that. And I am genuinely so excited that I finally got a taste of her in her writing, because this was absolutely phenomenal. In the Graham Effect, we have our female main character and our male main character. They are both hockey players. One is on the female team and one is on the male team. And pretty much, she smokes his ass when they're teenagers and then they happen to go to the same college together. Something along those lines. He then ends up helping her in college to improve some of her hockey skills, because at this point they're both, like, pretty damn good, they end up falling in love. But what was so special to me about this book is that the writing really feels like a little bit of Catherine Center to me. If you don't know, I love Catherine Center and her writing. I will eat it up every time, every day of the week. I seriously love Catherine Center so much. Now, I'm not saying that it is a carbon copy of Catherine Center's writing, because it is very much not. Catherine Center focuses a lot more on like the literary life lesson elements to this, whereas the part that feels Catherine Center to me is like the humor and the comedy that takes place in this book. And also the found family, like, hockey team situation. That also feels very Catherine Center. I'm also aware that Catherine Center is not the first person to write about the found family trope or like create humor in her books, but it just gives me the same feeling as hers does. Okay, that's like my baseline. But I seriously love this book so much. I don't think I've ever laughed so much listening to a romance in my life other than Catherine Center, because God, I love Catherine Center. I love Catherine Center. But I also really, really love The Graham Effect and Elle Kennedy. I definitely want to read more of her writing. I don't think I have yet. No, definitely haven't. But I want to. This was very enjoyable. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I liked this one. Good job. But speaking of Catherine Center, a shock to absolutely no one, I have another Catherine Center book that I read. This time, I read the rom-commers, and I loved it so much. So much. Every single time I pick up a Catherine Center book, I swear I love it more than the last one that I read. It started off with The Bodyguard, and then went to Hello Stranger, and now we have the freaking rom-commers, and I love the rom-commers. I especially love in this one how I could not feel the chemistry between the two characters at first, because it was a weird situation to me, but I love that it was like so realistic that way, because as they moved on in their story, I moved on with them, and I started to feel the chemistry and the bubbles and the butterflies and all the lovely romance things, and I truly love the rom-commers. To jump down the plot to like toddler level, female main character, male main character. They are both screenwriters. He is a very distinguished, very like, I'm Mr. Hollywood, a type screenwriter, whereas she has yet to like book a real job. But by some miracle of God, she is sent to LA to help him rewrite a rom-com screenplay, because he absolutely sucked butt at it. Because he typically writes action movies, and the only reason that he's writing this rom-com in the first place is so that he can book another action movie with a director. Okay. But of course, they end up having to live together and work on the screenplay. They become super close. They start to like each other, and it's an absolutely lovely time. Like, I loved it so much. I seriously have like no complaints about the rom-commers by any means, to any extent. I loved it, and obviously I loved it so much I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I truly was not expecting this to be a 5-star read, but I love this book. I love it so much, and I don't need to say anymore. I love the rom-commers. I love Catherine Center. I love the rom-coms by Catherine Center. It's a wonderful place to be. And then last but not least, we have one of my most anticipated books for this year. And that's gonna be Onyx Storm. I'm gonna be honest, I cannot be asked to hold this book because it's heavy as hell, so it's gonna go down, but we're still gonna talk about Onyx Storm. Okay, so there are lots of feelings and lots of like ideas here. We're gonna be here a hot second, pretty much. Let's talk about Onyx Storm. Okay, so I waited 12 to 15 hours after the book came out to start reading it, because I was actually busy with like work at school and stuff. But in that time period, my social media blew up with everybody talking about how disappointing Onyx Storm was and how no one was liking it. And I became very, very nervous and very concerned. But then I remembered that people said these same exact things about Iron Flame, and I actually really liked Iron Flame. And honestly, this same situation happened here with Onyx Storm. I completely 125% understand why some people either DNF'd Onyx Storm, couldn't stand part of it, thought it was dragged out, or just didn't end up liking the book as a whole. I understand. We've reached the point in this series where I don't want to say as an advanced reader, but as someone who reads a lot, I was expecting the series to get to this point, and it kind of did in Iron Flame, which is the same situation that we talked about when I was reviewing Iron Flame. People said it was slow and plot progression wasn't plot progressing and such and so forth. And I kind of understand how people feel the same for Onyx Storm. However, this is like the best way I can describe Onyx Storm to other people when they ask my opinion on it. Okay, I'm gonna like, it's not an onomatopoeia. I'm gonna like, what's it called when you compare things? I'm gonna simile this thing. Okay, let's start with my example. Okay, so go back to high school, go back to history class with that one guy who would just put on a movie or you read a page and answer some questions. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, cool. In history textbooks, when you're reading the history textbook, something can happen in like 1875 and then by 1880, something else has happened. Right? So the textbook will say something like, in 1875, I don't know what happened in 1875. This guy killed this guy, okay? And then that led to, in 1880, the freaking Turtle War. I don't know. But it's pretty much event number 1 happened, which led to the events of event number 2. This is our history textbook, okay? Let's put this to the side for a second. Here is the entirety of the Empyrean series. Let's let Fourth Wing be 1875, and the Empyrean number 5, because I think there's 5 books, be 1880. This is our timeline, okay? We are not jumping from Fourth Wing into Empyrean number 5. We're in the middle. We are getting all the nitty-gritty details of war and the repetitiveness of it, and the part that, like, they went journeying for 12 months out in the seas. We are getting the entirety of the story of everything in between. I personally love that in fantasies. I think it's beautiful. I love the nitty-gritty. I look forward to when we not slow down, but when we like really take a second to see how we get from point A to point B. I've come to expect this in fantasy books. I've come to expect it in long, drawn-out storyline series that have, 3+ books. I'm ready for it. I'm excited. What I think a lot of people don't realize is that Fourth Wing became so popular that it is some people's first fantasy series. And if you were to go into Fourth Wing as your first fantasy read, Fourth Wing seems like so energetic and so fun and there's so much happening. Then you go to Iron Flame, it gets a little bit slower, but it's okay, there's still dragons. And then you get to Onyx Storm and you're like, I just want to know. You're at the point of like, I just want to keep reading and keep getting the story that doesn't come out for another 2 years. And I personally think that it is that like, I just want to know, and that I want the same like hype as Fourth Wing feel that people are experiencing, no matter what like reading level you're at, whether it's your first fantasy read, your 1 millionth, or somewhere in the middle, you're grasping at it. And I get it, because I'm also like, I cannot wait for 2027 when book 4 that doesn't even have a title or anything like that comes out. Like, I'm waiting with the rest of you. I'm just kind of at the point where like, I'm so used to how the stories go, and I loved Onyx Storm because I was excited for the nitty-gritty and like the slowing down. But really, we're learning things that are probably going to be important in like 300 pages, okay? Just like put it in the pocket of your brain. Anyway, that is my Onyx Storm rant. I really hope my history book into the Empyrean series made sense, because it's not all on one page. It's like, what, 1,200 pages probably by the end of it. We're already at like 1,000, aren't we? I don't know. I just truly hope that if you are someone who feels that way about Onyx Storm or like the Fourth Wing series or literally any fantasy series in general, it's normal. It's normal. You're not going insane. It's okay to hate it. I've definitely had series where I've hated it. I'm like, I cannot stand that this is like the point where we're at, and it totally has affected my rating and my overall view of the series, the author, the characters, everything like that. Like, it's okay. It happens to everyone. I just wanted to be prepared for this series to do that, and honestly, I'm glad that I did prepare myself, because otherwise I feel like I would be in the disappointment boat. Anyways, I did like Onyx Storm. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars, which I think is the same rating I give Iron Flame, because to me they are the same. It's really just an extension of Iron Flame. I mean, like, duh, but like literally you could have put it in one book. Have like that midpoint crazy and move on. Yeah. Anyways, Onyx Storm. Anybody else waiting for 2027? Just 24 months. No, 23, just 20. Well, when's it coming out? 24. I'm so excited. Anywho, with that is every single book that I read in January of 2025. Looking back over this list, I am just now realizing that I did not pick up any books from my middle school category, and I'm definitely gonna need to pick some up before the end of February. I wanted to read 40 this year? I gotta get reading, dude. I gotta get reading. Anywho, thank you so much for wrapping up my January reading with me. I had a whole bunch of fun talking to you about this group of books. It's definitely an interesting one, and I cannot wait to see what reading adventures we take on in February. I know a couple of them already, but I'm excited to see what I pick up in the next week and a half. Anywho, we can wrap up February in about a week and a half because February's over in a week and a half. That's crazy to me. We're already 2 months into 2025. We're 2 months into 2025 already. Guys, I can't. If we sit here and talk about the timeline, I'll be here forever. Until next time, I hope that your guys' book worlds are treating you just as well as mine treat me, and I cannot wait for the next reading adventure that we take on next Wednesday. Toodles!